Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this presentation of the Carpinteria Community Library Strategic Plan 2025 to 2030. The panel of speakers this evening represents the committee that developed this strategic plan together with local stakeholders and community members. From 1910 to 2022, the CCL operated as the Carpinteria branch of the Santa Barbara Public Library. The process to withdraw from the SBPL system began in 2019 when City Council commissioned a report to examine the library's operations as a branch library and explore options for an alternative model of governance that could provide more local input and greater financial transparency than the library experienced as an SBPL branch. The ad hoc library committee's report led to the decision in 2020 to withdraw from the SBPL system and form an independent municipal library within the Black Gold Cooperative Library System. After an extensive interior remodel, the Carpinteria Community Library opened its doors in July 2022. Earlier this year, members of this panel and other stakeholders in the community engaged in discussions to gauge the CCL's success in its first 3 years of autonomous operation. This resulting strategic plan will guide the library's next 5 years of service to the Carpinteria community. We began the process by revisiting the initial report from 2020 that had informed the decision to operate independently because it contains valuable insight from stakeholders about their vision for library services in Carpinteria. Revisiting this report allowed us to ask, how are we measuring up to what the community has expressed it wants from its local library? The stakeholders in this phase included representatives from the City of Carpinteria and Carpinteria City Council, representatives from the Carpinteria Unified School District, members from the CCL's Library Advisory Commission and the Friends of the Carpinteria Library Volunteer Group, as well as both English and Spanish-speaking members of the community. Next, we initiated new discussions with these stakeholders to obtain feedback about the library's performance during its first 3 years, to gain understanding about the areas in which the library has not yet met the needs expressed by its community.
The 2020 Ad Hoc Library Committee Working Group report and a SWOT analysis inspired our mission, vision, and values. Our mission is guided by a commitment to provide services and collections that reflect Carpinteria's dynamic community. Our vision is to strengthen the bonds in the Carpinteria community and foster an interconnected, informed citizenry of readers, learners, and creators. Our values are guided by a belief in creating a community library space that is equitable, inclusive, and accessible to everyone. We believe in listening to the community, seeking community input, and hearing every voice. We communicate with integrity and transparency.
One of the strengths of the CCL is ongoing funding through the Measure X sales tax, City Council funding, additional funds from cannabis taxes, and fundraising by the Friends of the Carpinteria Library. Another strength of the library are the newly remodeled facilities, which provide inspirational and modern spaces for patrons. Finally, the CCL's continued membership in the Black Gold Cooperative Library System allows for resource sharing from 9 library systems and more efficiently makes use of library funding to serve the region's patrons. At the same time, the library does have some weaknesses, which include an underserved Hispanic and Latino community. Because nearly 50% of Carpinteria residents are Latino, and because Spanish is the primary language in 30% of all households, it is vitally important that the library further prioritizes service to this community in the future. Additionally, the library suffers from a lack of financial and programmatic transparency, with little to no information about the library's strategic plan posted publicly, which is what we're rectifying here today. Finally, the library has limited parking and hours of operation, which is a weakness that limits patron access to the library's resources, programs, and services.
We also identified areas of opportunity for the library. We see the opportunity to align with at least 2 of City Council's strategic goals for 2025, which could increase the library's value to City Council and lead to more support in the future. There is also an opportunity to increase collaboration with the Carpinteria Unified School District, which is Carpinteria's 3rd largest employer. Opportunities with the CUSD include increased staff engagement and support for student achievement in statewide testing scores. Additionally, library presence at popular events such as the California Avocado Festival would increase opportunities for community outreach and strengthen the library's position as a pillar in the community. The CCL is not immune to the external threats facing libraries, including the upcoming loss of federal funding due to the shutdown of the IMLS. With only 1% of our total funding supplied by the federal government, however, we feel the CCL is in a better position to address this threat than some other libraries in the state. Next, we recognize that increased ICE presence has been reported in Santa Barbara County and that the fear of immigration enforcement is a barrier to library use for some community members, and that must be addressed. Lastly, 3 city council members will be up for re-election next year, and the potential flip of up to 3 city council seats introduces a potential threat to the library's main source of funding that we must continue to monitor. From the information collected during our SWOT analysis, the information we gathered from stakeholders, and information gleaned from environmental scanning, we developed 6 strategic goals that comprise our 5-year roadmap to 2030. We're excited to present these goals and the specific objectives we'll take to reach them.
One of the weaknesses identified by the SWOT analysis was the lack of dedicated parking spots for library patrons and the limited hours of operation. In order to address these problems, the CCL will improve patron access by creating 3 dedicated parking spaces and extending evening hours of operation to 7 p.m. on weeknights and opening the library on Sundays. This will give patrons increased access to library materials, services, and programs. The library's next goal is to increase transparency about library operations in order to build trust with the public. The library will share a strategic plan with stakeholders and post it on our website. We are also developing a special report about the allocation of donor funds to share how these funds are enhancing library services rather than being used for regular library operations. Additionally, the CCL will create a public-facing plan to address potential ICE presence and to share this plan with the public so everyone in our community feels safe while using the library.
Currently, Carpinteria offers a couple regular programs for teens, the Dungeons and Dragons Club and Marker Space, both of which meet once a week. However, through focus groups with Carpinteria library patrons, it is clear that there is a desire for more after-school programming, particularly with creative and art-focused activities. We have therefore identified the enhancement of teen services as a priority. One of our main objectives is to expand youth arts programming. To achieve this, we plan to launch the Teen Arts Mentorship Program, which will be modeled after the successful program run by the Arts Fund in the Santa Barbara area. In collaboration with the Carpinteria Arts Center, a local nonprofit, we'll offer students ages 13 to 18 the chance to work closely with industry professionals in a studio environment. This program will give teens the opportunity to develop their creative skills while being mentored by experienced artists. Another key objective is to create an after-school study hall program for teens. Utilizing the library's multipurpose room, we plan to offer a quiet, supportive space for students to study and work on their assignments. This study hall will be available around 3 in the afternoon on 1 or more weekdays, providing an after-school destination that encourages academic focus and productivity.
Given that nearly half of Carpinteria's community is of Hispanic or Latino descent, it is pertinent that the library improves its engagement with these communities. Both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking focus group members in 2020 emphasized the need for more Spanish language library materials, especially audiobooks. An environmental scan of the CCL indicated a need for wayfinding signage in general, and the library will make sure to include Spanish translations on the new signage. Staff will be trained to better interact with Spanish-speaking library patrons by reviewing conversational Spanish and navigating the Spanish language library collection. Spanish language materials are currently interfiled throughout library shelving, To address the issue of findability, the library will institute a dedicated Spanish language shelving area with enough space to accommodate its growth. Finally, the CCL will strive to host more Spanish language programming that will include equivalents of English language programs. The CCL will also partner with the city to achieve greater engagement with the Hispanic and Latino communities through outreach. The Carpinteria Community Library collections, programs, and services are growing, and consequently, the amount of information available to the public is increasing. The current state of the CCL website is somewhat cluttered and difficult to navigate. Therefore, an update to the website's layout is needed to better serve the Carpinteria community's information needs. The website will essentially be divided by age group, with linked information, services, and programs of interest to each group. Valuable space currently sits unused along the website's footer. To remedy this, information about the library, including its code of ethics, policies, facilities and services, staff, employment opportunities, newsletter, and friends of the library, will be moved out of the main navigation menu and organized in the footer instead. Additional links to the Black Gold Cooperative website and the library strategic plan will be introduced. Finally, an environmental scan of the library showed that the CCL's restroom facilities are gender neutral and inclusive, but this information is not on the website. Gender non-binary and trans people often research restroom facilities before visiting businesses. The CCL will address these needs by adding information to its website about its all-gender restrooms.
Current accessibility challenges that need to be addressed include a lack of wheelchair access to the Wi-Fi patio, a lack of ADA push buttons at building entrances and exits, and the book drop bin's location by a large palm tree that makes it challenging for patrons in wheelchairs to return books from the curb. Improving accessibility for patrons with additional needs will improve library services for all patrons, ensuring that the library can be enjoyed by more people and connect more people to the information they need. Moving the book drop location by 1 foot closer to Walnut Avenue will ensure all patrons can safely and easily return materials and would encourage more patrons to check out and return materials on time. Building a ramp to the Wi-Fi patio will ensure all patrons can safely access and enjoy the outdoor space. Adding ADA push buttons at the identified entrance and exit areas will ensure all patrons can enter and exit the building without undue challenge. Finally, offering an enclosed space in the multi-purpose room will provide all patrons with access to a peaceful, noise-free environment within the library. We are deeply inspired as we look ahead to the enhanced and improved services we will provide for the dynamic Carpinteria community. Thank you so much for your responsiveness and engagement in this essential process.